Welcome, everybody. I'm here today with Brandon, who is an artist, and I'm hopeful that we get to talk a lot about how art intersects with all of these other things that are going on in this little corner of the internet. So, Brandon, you got in touch with me,
Hmm.
and I'm guessing that means you have something that you are eager to talk about. So, I'm going to put the ball in your court to start with.
Okay.
You tell me what it is that you have in mind.
Yeah. I always, for a few years now, I've been wrestling with this question of being an artist and vocation, and where it fits in with my relationship with God. And I guess I just, yeah, really wanted to question you on your experience as an artist and um, where you think that inspiration comes from, how you use that to have a relationship with God, if you do, and maybe some insight on being a professional artist, because I'm an aspiring professional artist. I have a day job full time still, and I try to work on things and learn as much as I can when I'm off, but it's hard.
Yeah. Well, so what is your day job?
I work at a t-shirt printing company.
Okay, so does that mean you get to use your art a little bit in designing T-shirts and so forth, or
No,
not?
I just work the production side of things,
Uh,
operating the printers and things like that. But
uh-huh.
there is potential there. They like to hire inside, so I'm always on the
Uh-huh.
lookout for a new opening.
Yeah, because one of my friends has her own T-shirt company,
Hmm,
and she does all the designs herself, and she kind of branched out into other things like making badges and various things like that,
oh, that's cool. Yeah.
school jackets and things like that. And so she creates logos for different schools and groups, and
Nice.
really gets to use her artistic abilities that way. So,
Yeah, that's cool.
yeah. Well, so when did you first get interested in art?
Who? I guess ever since I could really remember, I think video games and other forms of media, different movies and things were always a big inspiration to me. I like the world building aspect of it and the storytelling. So designing these characters and designing the different worlds and why they fit into those worlds and how.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's kind of how I got my start. I didn't take it seriously until a few years ago. I started going to um, art school at my community college here
Mm-hmm.
when I was 23, and it was a slow process. I kind of went as I could with working still, but yeah, I don't think that I was ever. I've always had an interest in it, but it's very intimidating to me. Um, I have a lot of lack of confidence when it comes to being able to do it as a career, and just confidence in my skill in general. So that's been a huge struggle for me, and I think that it's caused me to really waste a lot of time
Mm-hmm.
in pursuing it. So yeah, it's kind of the past, I would say, you know, 5 years is kind of the journey I've been on, and really trying to battle that and try to get confident and just keep pushing through it, you know.
Well, so I can give you a little assignment.
I love assignments.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a very thin little book. You may have
Hmm.
already heard of it. It's called Art and Fear.
Yes, I've read it.
You have read it. Okay, well,
Yeah.
because that really turned the corner for me when I read that book.
Hmm.
Because as I was reading the book and they're talking about the that feeling of fear and anxiety and trepidation and lack of confidence and self-doubt and all of those things I was feeling, which I thought meant I was a fraud and I had
Mm.
business,
Hmm.
whatever, even trying to do anything artistic.
Yes.
And then I read that and they said that is the pattern for what an artist is.
Yeah.
So, I guess I am an artist because I feel that all the time. Every time um, I mean, for the first 10 years, especially, every time I would pick up a brush, I would have to spend 2 days going through all that before I could even get into the studio to
Wow.
do
Oh
anything.
yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can
Um,
definitely relate to that.
but when I read that book, it really made me kind of rethink things. And then
Mm-hmm.
also the just the whole issue of how do you make progress as an artist? And one of the conclusions that I came to through a little experience that I had, maybe I'll relay the experience that I had.
Mm-hmm.
I had been just taking community classes to learn watercolor art for 3 or 4 years, maybe, when I heard about a class in creativity that um, a number of other artists had taken. They really recommended it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. And the whole premise of the class was that you, over the course of 10 weeks, you would paint 20 large scale paintings. So each week, you didn't do any painting in class. He would lecture on the elements and principles of art. But then in between class, you would go home and paint 2 large scale paintings and bring them back the next week for critique to show your work. And there was a very tight boundary around the limits of what it was that you were to paint. So you could pick any subject you wanted, but once you picked that subject, all 20 paintings had to be of that same subject.
Wow.
And once you oriented that subject on the rectangle, it had to be that same orientation for all 20 paintings.
Hmm.
So it wasn't like you could paint it large one week and small the next week and,
Right.
you know, expand it, or you had to paint the same shapes on the canvas week after week, 20 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, for 10 weeks. And so the idea is you make yourself a strict enough boundary, then you have no place to go except inside. And you have to
Hmm.
start battling for new ideas. And and everyone's experience seemed to be the same, that around the 4th week, people gave up on the same old, well, you try one in black and white, you do one in red, yellow, and blue, you do one in purple, orange, and green, and
Mm-hmm.
and what do? So at that point, after about week 4, people would start getting immensely creative, and all these ideas would just start rolling in. So the first time I took this class, I was feeling kind of intimidated because there were a lot of artists in the class that had more experience than I did and were certainly producing much better looking work than I was producing. And on week 4, so my subject was piano player.
Hmm.
And it was from behind the piano player, just looking at the hands on the keys.
Mm-hmm.
And along about week 4, I had this idea while I was painting. I thought, what would happen if I I'm looking at the hands on the keys and I'm thinking, the way the knuckles go and everything, it almost looks like mountains. What if I turn the hands on the keys into a landscape and
Oh
put
yeah.
mountains with a sunset behind? And what if I turn the keys into a waterfall with water falling down over the keys and crashing up against the mountains? And so I had this picture in my head, right? It was a amazing
Mm-hmm.
picture inside my head. But when I started to paint it, of course, it didn't come out anything.
Oh, never does, huh?
So when we take the paintings in, we'd have to stand up in front of the class at the easel and show our painting and then just wait. And one of our rules was we were not allowed to complain or
Mm-hmm.
whine or explain that it didn't turn out the way we wanted it to. We couldn't say anything. We just had to put it up there and wait.
Hmm.
And I was so ashamed of my lack of skill, and I was so embarrassed. And I put this painting up on the easel, and it didn't represent the picture in my mind at all. The water was terrible. The sunset was terrible. Maybe the mountains looked like mountains, but beyond that, the rest of it was fair game. And I put this thing up on there, and And I was actually standing there crying because
Wow.
it was such an intense feeling of shame and flawed,
Mm.
just everything about it was bad. But as I looked out over the crowd, there were 20 other artists in the group. There were some people crying out there. And I thought, what's happening, And one by one, these people started to say that they were so moved by this painting because it spoke something to them.
Mm.
And the reason that I had painted that painting, and maybe I explained it to the class. I can't quite remember if I explained it before or after they started giving their feedback, but my vision for it was related to my daughter's piano teacher. It was her hands on the keys. And when a piano teacher rests their hands on, when a piano player rests their hands on the keys, the her teacher would always say, it is the position of the hands, it is the strength with which you strike the key, and the proper pressure at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was listening to that, I thought, that's a lot. And that's what makes the beauty of the sound. That's what she said. That's what makes the beauty of the sound. So I thought, that's a lot about the way God works in my life. It seems like his
Huh.
hand is always in the right place at the right time with the right amount of pressure. And that's what allows me to bring forth anything useful or beautiful at all in my life. When he does the transforming work in me and brings me from shame to thankfulness or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
it's because of his hand being in the right place at the right time. So I told that little story to the class, which took a fair amount of courage because most of the artists that I hung
Mm-hmm.
out with were, I don't know if they were out and out atheists, but they were certainly not interested in Christianity.
Yeah.
And yet that painting had a real impact on quite a few people. And they came up to me afterwards and talked to me about it. And so I began to really think things through at that point. And I thought, apparently, it's not whether or not what you paint is flawlessly executed. What matters is, first of all, what's your purpose for painting it? And are you allowing the work to speak?
Hmm.
And then the other thing that I saw was um, we have a vision of what we want to accomplish, but our vision is always far out in front of our skill.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the only choice that we have, if we want to accomplish that vision, is to assess what skills do I need in order to reach that vision. So I took a look at it and I thought, obviously, I need to improve on painting water. I need to improve on maybe doing better watercolor washes in the background so that I get a more beautiful appearance of a sunset. I need to improve on my use of color. There were a number of things that I thought I needed to improve on. And so I started taking classes, doing some personal work on building my portfolio in those areas, improving my skill. So, and I took this class in creativity maybe 8 times. And each time I took it, I painted hundreds of
Wow.
paintings. So a lot of it is what our teacher would say is brush mileage. The more brush mileage
Yeah.
you get, the
Yep.
better you get, right?
Mm-hmm.
And every time I took that class, my creativity would grow. And until finally, I just had so many ideas that I couldn't shut them off. I mean, I could have painted 100 paintings of one subject. There were so many ideas coming. So, but 3, 4 years later, I have the skill now. I could go back and repaint that painting of the hands on the water, but that's not the painting I want to paint anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Because my vision is out ahead of me again. My vision
Mm-hmm.
has moved ahead of me. My skill caught up to this point, but now my vision is still out ahead of my skill. And And that's sort of a picture about the way the whole universe is supposed to work. That's what keeps us moving
Yeah.
forward, right? I don't know if you've been following Jordan Peterson at all, but
Yes.
he talks a lot about how there's this thing he calls interest that's out in front of you, that kind of glimmers out in front of
Mm-hmm.
you. And when you pursue that interest, especially if you keep your eye on the highest goal of which you can conceive, and you begin to pursue that interest, you're going to move forward. You're going to build those skills. You're going to, you're going to improve everything as you move towards that goal. Now you might have to reassess where the goal actually is, because we don't see things straight on the way we should.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as you keep moving towards that goal, you might be going up and down and up and down and up, but maybe it's, at least it's an upward trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started hearing Jordan Peterson teach about that, it fit in so perfectly with the things that I had already learned through this whole journey in art. I could really understand what he was talking about.
Yeah.
My vision always outruns my skill.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the only thing that makes me work on my skills. Otherwise, I would just sit back and, well, this is good enough. I'll just throw some paint on there and whatever.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot there. That was a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that with me. It is, when you're participating in art, and the way that you described it, about having the, like, the vision, what you want to do way in front of you, glimmering, and having that keep you going forward. And it's always like you're always in the middle of that in your past. It's such a cool representation of reality, I think. And like you said, and when I was when I started going to school for art, that's when I discovered Jordan Peterson, and he was a huge influence on a lot, conceptually, a lot of what I was painting. And during my student capstone shows, it's like your final show before you graduate, you have to do. There was pieces in there that my teacher, who was critiquing it, could pick out and be like, this is you in a way. This is, I can tell that you were comfortable here, and that you weren't thinking, so much about it being perfect, and your skill set and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And these over here, I can tell that you were. It's too stiff in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, just like the story that you told, where you were so nervous about this painting and
Mm-hmm.
self-conscious about it, and you moved people to tears. Like, that is amazing. It's so cool. It's like, there's something there, there's something, when you let it flow through you, that is really incredible. And I don't want to say that skill doesn't matter, like, I think as an artist you should always be striving to be better, but that's different for different people. It depends on what you want to do with art. But yeah, I really struggle with that, and even thinking about, I think that you checked out the my portfolios that I sent you. Like, even thinking about some of those pieces in there, I, there are some that are just, the only way I can describe them is they're so stiff, because I was so focused on trying to be what I think um, is best, what I envision as a professional, you know, and the pieces suffer for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, so because I don't know you and I haven't seen your trajectory, it would be
Hmm.
hard for me to identify which ones that you see,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
ones you don't see as stiff. But it's wonderful that you had a teacher with such wisdom, that your teacher could assess that about you. Because I remember
Yeah.
my very first watercolor teacher, she was a lovely older woman, and now I'm probably the same age that she was then. But
Yeah.
she would she would be across the room. She would do a demonstration for us, and then we would each begin working on our work, and she would be walking around talking to people, and she'd be on the other side of the room, and she'd holler back, and she'd say, Karen, stop right there. Like one more brush stroke would be too many, and she could always tell when that point was, because
Wow, that's
I'd want to
incredible.
fiddle and fix it, you know, and line that thing up, and
You
she'd say,
can't really do that with watercolor.
yeah, say, no,
You
you
got
got
to
to
be.
stop there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's funny.
She was a really great teacher, and it's good to have a teacher that knows you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was always very thankful for her. She would tell you how it was. You know, she she wasn't very empathetic at all, but that's what I really appreciated about her, because I knew that I was getting the truth,
Mm.
and you know, I needed somebody to tell me where I needed to go. A lot of students didn't like her because of that, and I'm like, I love it. I think it's great. But so do you think that going through those classes, one quick question too. So you were painting the same angle and the same subject at the same angle 20 times or
Mhm,
10 times.
mhm.
Wow,
20 paintings, yeah.
that's really really cool. I have to maybe try to do that. Um,
Well, I did wiggle a little bit, I'll have to say. I mean, the last time I took the class, my subject was a cello player.
mhm,
So if you look at my website,
mhm,
probably put 10 of my cello players on, and you can see. In some of them, the arm is out here, in some of them, the arm is down here, you know, the arm
mhm.
holding the bow. So I did change the form of the player a little bit,
Right.
um, just for composition's sake in my frame.
Mhm.
But they were all cello players.
Yeah, that's a
And
really cool assignment.
one time I did my favorite series that I ever did that gave me a lot of creative latitude was I painted a dragonfly.
Hmm.
And I oriented the dragonfly. I painted them all on a square canvas, and I oriented the dragonfly just slightly off center. So the body of the dragonfly and the wings of the dragonfly divided the square up into 4 unequal rectangles.
Hmm.
And so that gave me some latitude to play with strictly non-objective, kind of abstract type work.
Yeah.
And
Sorry.
that was a really great experience. I really
Mhm.
enjoyed that. And I sold every single dragonfly.
Wow.
So it was a very successful series as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. But people have a sense for authenticity, and when you let it come out of you, you know, it could be really successful.
Mhm.
Um, so when you were doing the piano player and and you had this idea and you did the mountains and the waterfall and everything, like, did you feel um like you were connecting to God at all when, or like in maybe not even just that painting, but just painting in general, this whole journey that you've been on with
Mhm.
art? Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I would say I wouldn't say that it's 100% consistent experience, but
Hmm.
there certainly are times when I sense that, and that painting was definitely one of them. There were several other paintings that I did in that series of the piano player where um, sometimes, I mean, I remember one of them, I was in a pretty dark emotional state because of something that had happened in our family, something someone had said to me that kind of threw me off, where I had to recognize some things about myself that I didn't particularly
Mm.
like, I didn't like to
Mm-hmm.
think about. And so I was in this kind of dark place, and uncharacteristically, I allowed myself to pour that out in paint on the paper. Um, I don't usually like to let myself paint things that aren't pretty.
Yeah.
But that particular time, I really let myself experience all of my emotions. and it was a very, very strong painting. And
Mm.
ultimately, I was surprised this woman bought it for her in-laws who live in Florida, because she thought it would really speak to them, because they were great musicians and they loved the piano, and so somehow she could feel the strength in it, you know.
Yeah.
Um, when I was painting the Dragonfly series, there were quite a few times when I was, part of my reasoning for painting the Dragonfly was that, I don't know if you've ever had this experience or not, but in some of my paintings, over time, I'll start to notice certain iconic shapes that show up. I'm
Mm.
not really conscious of those shapes being in the painting until after I'm done painting it, and then I'll look, and this iconic shape that kept showing up in a lot of my paintings and my sketches was kind of the shape of Christ on the cross,
Mm.
with his arms up and his head down, just just that shape. And so I thought, well, maybe if I do this Dragonfly, I'll be able to explore that shape more.
Mm.
And so I was really thinking a lot about spiritual things when I was doing that series. And also when I did a series that is still online, I probably should take it down because the artwork is not very good, but the series I thought was interesting.
Mhm.
Um, one of the series I did was, and this was before the rules got so strict, so you will see that not every painting is exactly in the same place in the rectangle. His rules got more strict as time went on.
Oh, okay.
My photograph was of a guy sitting at a cafe table with a pitcher of water and two glasses. And so in the first painting, he's just sitting at the table with the two glasses, the pitcher of water. In fact, probably in the first two or three paintings, it was like that. And then eventually I thought, why are there two glasses and why is he alone?
Mm-hmm.
So I started to think about that, and I thought, water, the living water. Jesus is always offering us that living water, but we're not always receiving it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started playing around with trying to make this glass base of water very luminous. Now, I didn't have the skill to do that at the time. I didn't know how to make that water look luminous, but I wanted to make it just like come off the page. And then over time, I thought, well, probably painting number 7 or 8, I thought that water needs to come out of that pitcher. And so I let the water turn into a wave. And so he's kind of being subsumed by this wave of water. And by the time I was on painting 9 or 10, maybe this wave had taken shape into that shape in the background behind him. And
Wow.
and then probably painting number 12, that shape behind him was suffused with all sorts of rainbow colors just pouring down. And that was one of my favorites that I did out of that series. I don't think I still have a photograph of it because I sold that one. But
Mm.
at that point, he's no longer sitting at the table, but he's turned and he's looking at this colorful shape in the background, kind of looking up in amazement. And then by the end of the series, that becomes a painting that I call the living water, which was, are you familiar with that song by Rich Mullins called My Deliverer is Coming?
I don't think so, no.
Oh, it's one of my very favorite. You got to look that one up. My Deliverer is Coming by Rich Mullins.
Writing it down.
Yeah. So there's this wonderful line in there that um, his living water flows through Lake Sangra's broken heart. And I looked that up and I thought, what is Lake Sangra? Well, Lake Sangra is a lake out on the plains in Kenya. And there's a rift in the plain and a kind of a break, and the water's flowing down. So it's like a waterfall.
Mm-hmm.
But then I thought, well, it's like that canyon where the picture that they always show in in the little pamphlets talking about what it means to be saved by Jesus, where there's a rift between God and us. And the only thing that can bridge that rift is Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my painting, there's the rift in the canyon walls, and that they're all rock. And then the water is the shape of Christ. So Jesus is spanning that rift. And
Wow.
that's one of the paintings that it's on my website in the,
Is it?
yeah, it's
Okay.
on my website in the portfolio that's called Living Water.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'd really like to look at that.
Yeah, and like I said, it's not a great painting. I wasn't able to capture in paint what it was in my head, although it is better in person than it is in that tiny little photograph
Mm-hmm.
online, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still not what I wanted it to be. But nevertheless, it spoke deeply to people. And see, this is where I think it's so important to believe in God's power, because if I have a picture of something and I want, and I'm able to make it exactly like my picture, I did that.
Mm.
If I have a picture of something in my mind and I can't accomplish it, but whatever is there on the paper speaks to people, then it's not me speaking to people, it's God speaking to people.
Mm.
Um, because he's able to take our inadequacies and use them for his glory somehow. I don't understand how all that works,
Yeah.
but that's one of the things that gives me the confidence to say, okay, even if I can't do what I wish I could do, and I can't make it the way I wish I could make it, I can make according to the best that I can do right now, and then I can just put it in his hands and see what he does with it. And it's not a mark of whether it's good or bad, whether somebody buys it or not. That's not what I'm saying. But
Mm-hmm.
um, and it's hard to talk about these things because of course it's going to sound as though I'm blowing my own horn, right? But
Yeah.
for
I
whatever
don't think
reason,
that.
some of these paintings God has used in ways that I can't calculate. I mean, I don't understand it, and I don't deserve it, and I don't know why,
Mm-hmm.
but I've had so many amazing things come from these paintings, and all I
Mm-hmm.
can say is that I've been blessed to have had the opportunity to put paint on paper, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
I I think
One time I did a show with another gal, and we both had, I don't know, 15 or 20 paintings in this show, and a woman came up to me who was a friend of my colleague, artist, the other artist. And this woman said, you know, I'm a therapist, and I sometimes use your paintings in my therapy.
wow.
I said, what? She said, yeah. She said, people bring in like greeting cards, because I used to sell greeting cards of some of my work.
Hmm.
She said, people will bring in this card and it'll have this painting on it, and they'll say, for some reason, this painting speaks to me. Can you please help me understand what it is that's speaking to me in this painting?
Wow.
And so I'm like, wow, that's, you know, I don't know where that comes from, but it doesn't come from me, because
Did
there's
she
no
give
way.
you any explanation? Like, was she able to determine anything?
Well, you know, it's one of those things where I feel really bad I didn't ask more questions, but it was a show, and so it was a reception. So there's people
Mm-hmm.
all over, the people coming up talking to you.
Yeah.
She says this little thing to me, and then she wanders off, and
Mm-hmm.
somebody else comes up and starts talking to me, and I didn't go running after her and say, wait,
Right.
tell me
Well,
more.
yeah, it's hard at a show like that when, yeah, there's a
Yeah,
lot of people that are there to see you that you want to acknowledge and everything. So,
yeah. But I mean, I've had many experiences like that. And so I think that God definitely does work through our creative efforts, regardless of whether they're art or writing or, you know, cooking,
mm-hmm.
anything that we do that serves others. God is working in that somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what inspires you when you're painting?
I'm I have a really hard time discerning this because I feel like it's such a deep spiritual that's a word that fudges.
Mhm.
You
Yeah,
know, I feel
you
like it's
listen to
such a
Paul too.
oh yeah, big Paul fan. You know, when I say that, I guess I mean it's like communication, like you're communicating with the divine, you're communicating with God.
Mhm.
um and I I want it to be like that all the time, and I sometimes I psych myself out and say, wait, no, that's just you tricking yourself because you really like to do this and this is what you want to do,
Mhm.
and this is like the career that you want. So I've been just going back and forth for a long time with that, like I think that I can genuinely say that I want him always to get the glory,
Mhm.
but it is something I love to do. So it's hard to, I
Mhm.
feel like if I have me in it at all, then he's not getting the glory, if that makes sense to you. So I have a hard time um, feeling like like I'm connecting with God with that. Does that make any sense?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean,
Okay.
I've had that internal debate over and over and over again. I can remember many times, like even getting down on my knees and saying, I don't know if this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my time. Is there some other way I'm supposed to be serving? You know,
Yeah.
is
Mm-hmm.
it I'm blessed to be in a situation where I have a husband who cares for our financial needs, so I don't
Mm-hmm.
need to sell, and if I did need to sell enough to live on, I don't think I could.
Mm-hmm.
Even in my best year, I think I sold $7,000 worth, and that was many
Mm.
years ago when the economy was really hot. So I could never make a living at it. But there are a lot of other things that I could be doing. I could be helping out at soup kitchens and feeding the poor, and do I do this as a way of avoiding doing those other things?
Mm.
Is it a way of making myself feel worthwhile? And is this how I'm finding my identity? And certainly I don't want any of those to be the reason that I'm doing this. And so it gets all tangled up, right? It's just this
Yep.
big knot.
Mm-hmm.
And but but there's also something to be said for I'm assuming you've seen that old movie, um, Chariots of Fire.
No, I
uh,
haven't.
Eric Liddell, he was a runner in the 1932 Olympics. It's a beautiful film, beautiful, beautiful film. There's one scene of him running, and of course he went through all these questions. Am I doing this just for myself, just for my own glory, or am I doing this to honor God? And there's one scene where he says, when I run, I feel his pleasure.
Mm.
And because I really believe God made you unique. He made you different than anybody else. And he's gifted you in your life with gifts that nobody else has. And he has put you in situations where you've had life experiences that nobody else has experienced. And you have met people that nobody else has met, and you've had conversations that no one else has had, and you've listened to songs and seen paintings and read books and heard messages at church and thought about scripture verses in ways that no one else ever has. So you are a completely unique conglomerate of, it's like you are this complete DNA package of physical DNA and experiential DNA that makes
Mm.
you unlike anybody else on the planet or that ever will be on the planet. So any information that you take in and any information that you give out is going through your filter and coming back out of your filter. And it seems to me that all of us are here to share with each other all of these things that we see in the world so that we all have the most fulfilled vision of who God is, which we can't have if we hold those things inside. So,
Hmm.
so the way God made you unique and different and special, He's going to work through that, whether He works through that with art or with your job or with however you serve in the church or however that might be. God is working through you. So I think I'm not sure this is even the right language, but it's some kind of a category error to say, I can't let myself be inserted in my art. Yourself is supposed to be inserted in your art. Yourself is who God made you to be. So your art is going to be a reflection of how you glorify Him. So you have to be a part of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was very, very beautifully put. That's very encouraging for me too. Yeah, I mean, it's not, like you said, it does have to be you. You have to be involved. There is a communication there. And I've been listening to a lot of conversations that and things have been being brought up on why, um if God is, let me see if I can link this. There's a spark in my mind here. Let's see if it works. If God is omniscient and things like that, why was he debating, and why was he, you know, reasoning and wrestling with people in the Bible? Why were people able to convince him to change his mind? And I think that's part of who he is and how he loves us. It's almost like he kind of stoops down on our level to be able to communicate with us because he loves us.
Mm-hmm.
And I sometimes when I'm working on something, I get just this, I'm in this kind of like warmth where I have to kind of stop and thank him
Mm-hmm.
that I'm able to do this, because it just feels right, and I feel close to him in a lot of those moments. So yeah, just kind of, agreeing with what you're saying. I need to look at it more like a blessing. I think that these anxieties are showing that in a lot of ways, I don't trust him,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to work through that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the major job of a believer, I think,
Hmm.
getting to the place where we can trust Him. Because I, I mean, I've gone through waves and waves and waves in my life where I thought, okay, now I've got it. I know how to trust, right? And
Yeah,
and then something blindsides me, and I was
almost
really
immediately,
feeling
right?
like I was totally in that place where I was just trusting and following, and then this coronavirus thing comes around
Hmm.
and I wasn't feeling very well, and it wasn't even so much that I'm worried about myself being sick, but we host a lot of events in our home and we're always out at a lot of events, and I'm thinking, if I have this and I'm out there spreading this amongst all the
Mm.
people, I'm like typhoid Mary. Fortunately, I'm feeling a lot better today,
Well,
and
that's good to hear.
yeah,
Glad to hear that.
but I'm planning, they said in California that we should all shelter in place if we're over 60. And so I'm just going to shelter in place for a few weeks and see how it goes. But
Yeah.
um, obviously, that's a place where I want to trust God, but it's also a very confusing place. What does it mean to trust? Does it mean you just brazenly go about your daily life and do whatever you want? I don't think so, because my life impacts a whole lot of other people as well.
Hmm.
And even if the only thing that happens is that I get so sick that I have to go to the hospital, maybe I'm taking up a hospital bed that somebody else needs. And so
Mm-hmm.
so I think part of trusting means being obedient to do the right thing. I mean, one of the reasons I like Jordan Peterson is not so much that, because he doesn't really talk about trusting God, right?
Right.
But he does talk about what it means to be a responsible human being, which I think
Hmm.
all of us are called to be. And those of us who belong to Christ, even more so, are called to be responsible human beings. So,
Yeah, absolutely. There were so many connections that I made after listening to him in terms of thing like looking at scripture in a slightly different way, or just generally understanding it better.
mhm,
It was awesome. Um, Shoot, what was I going to say? Oh, um, how you were talking about trust with God and Jordan Peterson again. Don't you think that that is kind of that glimmering thing that you're looking towards
mhm,
and the past? Because you 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 come to, I mean, me too, come to a certain point where you're like, I get it, I trust him, I'm doing all the right things, I'm feeling good, and then
mhm,
something happens
mhm,
and you're like, wait, I don't trust him. So you have to strive to get closer to him again.
mhm,
And that's just gonna keep happening. And I think that's him showing his love. It's not like we have to, it's showing us that we have to be with him constantly. And when we forget, and he reminds us.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. What's that whole thing of, well, it's partly like human relationships are like that.
Yes.
I mean, my husband and I have been married for 27 years,
Wow.
and the first 10 or 15 years were pretty rocky.
Yeah.
And but things have gotten better and better, and we have times now when it's just like, man, if all of life could be like this, it would be so great. I'm just so in love. And then there'll be a day I'm just like, why am I stuck here? and and like, where does that thought even come from?
Hmm.
And part of it is when you're joined at the hip with somebody 24/7, it's 24/7, and it's 365 days a year. And
Hmm.
and we all have this desire that we would like to have some freedom and some flexibility and whatnot. But
Yeah.
um, I think that that's just a reflection of the way our relationship is with God too. We can have times when we just feel so in love with Him, we feel so close. One of my Sunday school teachers years ago, when I was a new believer, he put it this way, and I was a new believer, so I didn't understand what he was saying at all, but I reflect on it now, I totally get it.
Yeah.
He was saying, yeah, sometimes reading the Bible is like eating dry cornflakes, but sometimes it's like peaches and cream.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're trying to do the Bible in a year, my wife and I, and I'm a little bit ahead of her, and she's in, I think she just got to Leviticus, and she texted me and she was like, this is so repetitive, I don't know if I can do this. I'm like, yeah, that's Leviticus and Numbers kind of gets everybody when you're trying to do it in a year. But
Yeah.
yeah, we're going on 4 years being married, and maybe if you could have me on the show again, I'll talk about how I really threw a wrench into our marriage by purchasing a really old house that needed a lot of work, and a lot more work than we were anticipating.
Are
We
you
kind
still
of, I'm sorry.
in the house?
No, well, the story goes, we bought the house and then moved in with my parents because it needed a lot of work. But I go there after work, and we do what we can with the time that we have, and it's been a incredible experience. Super low lows, um, pretty high highs, but I think the best is yet to come. And again, listening to Jordan Peterson and hearing things like take on as much responsibility as you could possibly manage. I took that a little too seriously, I think. But I mean, it's true. You promise to not leave this person. and you forsake all others for them. And, to be frank, we live pretty cushy lives, especially here in the West. Wanted to see what we were made of. If I think that if we can't get through this house, then how are we going to manage the bigger things that God has planned for us? And,
Mhm.
you know, so yeah, that's a whole story that would be pretty fun to talk about at some point.
Well, I will say this, once you get through and your house is finished and you're living in it, and you know that you did that, that is going to be unlike anything else that you'll be able to share for the rest of your lives together.
Yeah, that's the point.
Yeah.
That's why we did it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, when I was in my younger days, we had a lot of old rickety houses that we moved into and tore apart and put back together again. And yeah,
Hmm.
I've been there. I've been there.
Yeah.
It's a it's a tremendous challenge, but there's also something just so invigorating about it, like once you complete one part of it, it's just like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not even a skilled craftsman in that aspect at all. I know a little tiny bit. It's getting me by, but it's still like um I I'm just at the drywall stage now in the one room. I pretty much gutted the whole thing, and now it's like really starting to shape up, and it
Doing
is
the
like,
drywall yourself?
yeah.
Wow, you are so courageous.
Yeah, it's not the most pretty job. It's pretty crooked, but it's an old house too, so it's not like anything straight anyways. But yeah, I want to see what I'm capable of, what we're capable of as a couple. And like you said, being able to look back on it, and saying like we made it through this. And you know really, it's really forcing us to rely on God in almost all aspects of our marriage, emotionally, financially, mentally.
Mm,
So it's been really, really cool. We have a 7-month-old on top of it too, so that complicates things.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The second house that we did, we had a baby. I remember that. Yeah.
So you're living proof for me that it's possible.
Well, I should be full disclosure. So this is my second marriage. My
Mm-hmm.
first marriage, I was married the first time for 20 years.
Wow.
We made it through. We remodeled like 5 homes maybe,
Wow.
all in the first 9 years of marriage. And then we became Christians. And after we became Christians, within 2 or 3 years, we felt a call to become missionaries.
Mm.
And so we ended up going to Japan as missionaries.
Wow.
So went to graduate school in order to prepare for that so that we could teach English in Japan. And then we ended up in Japan. And at this point, we had been married for 16 years and we were in Japan for 3 more years. And at that point, my husband told me that he was gay and he was leaving me for a man.
Wow.
And I was completely blindsided. I had absolutely no idea.
Yeah.
And he was my everything. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
in a sense, I had made him the idol in my life, even though
Mm.
I said that I believed God and trusted God and, walked with Christ and all of that. My husband was totally my idol.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a crushingly grueling, painful, devastating thing to go through. But the minute I came back to the United States, I found my mother in surgery for cancer, which they determined was inoperable. And she only lived for 6 more months. And then my dad died 4 weeks after she did. So I didn't
Wow.
have time to grieve the loss of my marriage, or I just didn't have time to do anything, right? Um, but what I did discover during that time was that Jesus is enough. He is
Mm.
completely enough. And when I was in the most excruciating need of my life, he was the only one who understood the pain I was in and the needs that I had. And he was with me 100%. And also the body of Christ came around and supported me in such amazing ways, because all the
Mm.
people from my little home church came, helped me with packing up my parents' home, helped me. After I found a job out in California, they helped me move out here and start a new life. And I don't know what people do who don't have Christ when they go through something like that. I just have
Yeah.
no idea.
Hmm.
And after I had been out here 3 years, I met my current husband and we got married, and we've been married now for 27 years. And
That's
uh,
awesome.
we've done some home remodeling since we got married, but mostly we bring in workers who do the work, because my
Hmm.
husband is a tech guy, so he's got the financial means to pay somebody else to do the work.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how it would go if I saw him doing drywall. I think I would rather depend on a drywall company to do the drywall, because that's a tough one. That's a very tough.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I think that that's the real reason that it's important to go to church, is that, I mean, of course, the worship and the message and everything, but it's really the community and the relationships that you make are just like no other. From our personal experience getting involved in our church, it's
mhm,
there's just some people there that really care about us, and I feel that genuinely, and I don't know why. you know and it's just such a blessing to have people like that in your life. It's like nothing else.
mhm.
um that that was I'm thankful that you shared that with me. That's I couldn't imagine going through something like that. You must be incredibly strong to stick by Christ through all of that.
Well, no, I don't think I really had that many options. Not like,
Hmm.
where was I going
Yeah.
to go? I forget which of the disciples says it. Where can we go, Lord? You have the words of truth. Where else can I go?
Hmm.
When you're when you're in a situation like that, what options do you have? You could you could say, okay, well, things are bad, there must not be a God. Has that helped me?
Mm.
What does that get me, Or I
Yeah.
could shake my fist and say, why would you do this to me? Is that going to help? I mean, that doesn't help
Hmm.
in relationship. And if we truly understand what it means to walk with God, we understand that it is a relationship. He loves us. We are his children, and he has a relationship with us. And as you said, he stoops down to our level and communicates with us and gives us opportunities to grow, just the way a parent would give their child an opportunity to grow. And um, the best option I have is to keep my hand in his.
Hmm.
You know? Um,
Yeah.
Plus, once you really get a picture of who God is and how big he is and how um, deep and wide and high is his love, I don't know how you could go anywhere else. And I was blessed in the very first church that I became a believer in I was 30 years old when I came to faith. And it was a little country church out in the middle of nowhere. And there were 5 little towns around the outside of where this little church was. And this was like the only gospel teaching church in that area. And so people would come from all these little towns out to this little country church. And the pastor was such a wonderful, simple, deep man of God. And
Hmm.
the kind of guy who, when he would go to the farmer's house and he would get under the tractor with the husband and he would help him fix the tractor. And then he would go in and the wife would give him a piece of pie and a cup of coffee. And he'd visit with her. And then maybe some other guy was doing a remodel of his basement and he would go in and help the guy remodel his basement. And that's how he kept in touch with his flock. He didn't sit on his laurels or spend the whole week in his study, holed up with the
Mm,
Bible, but he was out there with people.
yep.
And whenever we would have a question about God's word, because we were new believers, he would jump in the car, drive the 10 miles to our farm, and he would sit with us and explain everything. And, I don't know. I don't know why I had that kind of a privilege to get that kind of a start in my walk of faith, but having that kind of a foundation, uh, I didn't have any option to walk away from that. I mean, there's just too much beauty and truth wrapped up in that.
Oh, yeah. That's really, really cool. Huh. Yeah. Well, I think that I don't know exactly what I'm looking for in terms of these answers to these questions I'm asking, but I think you gave me the insight to find it. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling very encouraged. I'm
Oh,
excited to explore a bit more and be more confident with this blessing that God's giving me, with this passion for art. So yeah.
that's really cool. Well, I'll tell you what, I haven't been painting much lately because I haven't been very motivated or inspired or whatever.
Hmm.
But I'm going to go out this week and I'm going to paint something.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
And you do the same.
that sounds great. Yeah.
Then maybe we can show each other what we came up with.
Yeah, I would love to do that. Do we got
Okay.
a time limit?
Hmm?
Do we have a time limit?
No, no. Although boundaries do make things better, you should have
I
a
need them.
boundary. Boundaries are very important. It would be fun to have a conversation in the future about the various elements and principles of art and how they intersect with physical reality, because I've been thinking a lot about that. And I think physics and mathematics and chemistry and biology and all of these things intersect with these very fundamental elements and principles of art in a way that I would love to be able to write a book about it, but I can't.
Mm,
It's such a big topic that I can't wrap my head around it, but conversations always help. So,
yeah, I think that's awesome. And I've heard you mention Eric Weinstein before. I know that he has some interesting things to say on that, and he has had an artist on his show that
yeah,
does
that
a
was
lot
a
of,
really good conversation, wasn't it? I really liked
yeah,
that one.
very
Yeah,
fascinating.
yeah,
I don't know if I could contribute at all, but I would love to be a part of that conversation, and maybe just a conversation partner, just somebody to talk to,
yeah.
because
Sounds
that stuff really fascinates me as well. There's definitely a link there. Yeah, I love this whole project that you're doing. I think it's so cool. Um, because I I believe in it. I do. I think that a lot of these disciplines are related on a lot of different levels, and it could be very beneficial to just get everybody together and start talking about things like this.
Well, if you know any other people that you think would be interesting to talk to, let me know, because I ran dry a little bit in terms of having people to come on. So
Mm.
that's why I haven't done anything the last week or so.
I was gonna suggest Matt, but he's been on the show already quite a
Yeah,
bit, huh?
yeah.
He's
Well,
pretty
but I
incredible.
will have him on again because I really enjoyed talking to him.
He's
So
so much fun to talk to.
are you in the same area?
No, I'm in Matt's in San Francisco, right?
Um,
Matt Allison.
Albany. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
which I
No,
think
I'm
east.
East Coast.
Oh, you're East Coast. Okay, I thought you said in
Hmm.
the West. So yeah.
No, I'm outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now I just talked to somebody. Oh, Ju- Justin, Jeremy. I did a conversation on my channel a few days, maybe about a week ago, with a guy named
Hmm.
Jeremy, uh,
Hmm.
and he's from Pennsylvania.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know what part of Pennsylvania. I think he said northern, so I don't know where that is relative to Pittsburgh.
He wasn't. the guy about the horse whisperer. Is
Yeah,
that who you're talking about?
yeah, uh-huh. Yeah,
I did listen to that conversation.
yeah. He's from
Huh.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah. I may have to, yeah, I may have to find out where from.
Yeah, yeah. I started a Jordan Peterson meetup group in my area.
Hmm.
And so Matt has come to some of the meetings and some other folks, and it's been really fun, really great experience. Met very interesting people doing that. So
Yeah, I'd like to do something. There is somebody from the Discord that lives like 20, 30 minutes away from me. And we've been trying to get together. So
once you
hopefully
get
we
your
get
house
together
done,
more. What? Oh,
you
yeah.
get your house done.
Well, that's going to be another decade or so. So I don't,
Yeah, well,
but
you can't live with your parents for 10 years though. So
no,
do you
no.
have a
I mean,
plan for like getting the kitchen and the bedroom done first so that you can at least move back in and then work on it?
yeah, the quick status update now would be our bedroom, I started in the bedrooms and they're not where I want them, but they're livable. We made them livable. The bathroom is livable for the most part, although I would love to gut it just because it's a bathroom that was somebody else's at one point. But right now our focus has been the kitchen and the living room and get those just completely done and set with pretty much all new everything. The living room is getting new walls, but the kitchen isn't. But we have laminate floor that we're putting throughout both rooms because they're connected. So once those two places are in good shape, then we're going to move in.
Yeah.
We'd probably be moved in now if it wasn't for my son. It's too dusty in there for
Oh,
him
yeah.
to,
Yeah. The
yeah,
little one. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I'm thinking if we work real hard, keep at it before April, or
Wow.
like as soon as April hits, we should have both of those rooms done. You
Wow.
know,
That's amazing.
yeah. I mean, well, we've been working on it since December, so
That's almost nothing. I mean, when people around here, a lot of people remodel their houses because it's a high end. I mean, California,
Mhm.
everything is so expensive. So when somebody moves in, if they're going to pay that much for a house, they want it to be the house they want. So they fix it all
Right.
up. And
Hmm.
usually it's at least 6 months from the time they buy the house until they move
Wow.
in. So yeah,
Yeah.
if you're moving that fast, you're doing good.
Good. I appreciate that. I'm gonna tell that to my wife. Maybe we're gonna have to get her to see this. No, she's been awesome. She's been so patient. It stinks for her because basically she has to stay at home with the baby. She wants to be there helping. So, at times we get babysitters and we're able to go over there, but together. But yeah, I mean, we both want to be out of our parents' house. Our parents are great, but it's hard being trapped in one little room with a
Yeah,
family, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, for sure. Well, I greatly admire you and everything you're working on. So um, let's keep in touch and have another conversation. That'd
Yeah,
be
that
great.
sounds great. Thank you so much, Karen. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brandon.
Mhm.